We have arrived to our final chapter, and by my opinion, one of the most important ones in this whole series. And it's about move orders in Italian. After opening moves, White now plays castle, and I believe this is the most precise move in this position. He can also play move d3, but in general I like to finish development first. After castling, White has two moves. One of them is knight f6, the main move, and he can play d6. The idea of move d6 is after c3, black has options of playing queen f6. And still I believe White here has very good options to obtain advantage, but it's unclear line. Again, after c3, black can just play knight f6 and we are already in the main line if White plays d3. After knight f6, we play move d3. Black castles, and now move h3. White is inviting black to play d5 because, in my opinion, he's well prepared for it. In case of d5, White takes d5, knight takes d5, rook e1. The pawn on e5 is hanging because now the typical tricks with bishop f2 don't work. For example, if black plays a6 after knight e5, rook e5, bishop f2, king f2, queen f6, queen f3, queen e5, the knight on d5 is hanging and White is winning. Instead, after rook e8, black can play bishop e6, which is a very solid move and defending the knight on d5. So now knight e5 is not working because knight e5, rook e5, bishop f2, king f2, queen f6, queen f3, queen e5, and the knight on d5 is defended, and black is close to winning. Instead of taking on e5, White plays knight bd2, and now he again threatens to take on e5. Black plays f6, now c3. White wants to play d4 because black cannot take. He takes d4 because bishop on e6 is hanging. The best move for black is bishop f7, knight e4, bishop b6, b4. White can play this move because f5 is never working. After f5, knight g5, now bishop on f7 is hanging and black will be pinned. And after knight c3, White wins. Knight f7, bishop f2, and now very strong move for White is king h1. It's important not to take on f2 because knight d1 is a check and White is losing. After king h1, rook f7, queen b3. Again, very strong move, double attack, attacking knight on c3 and rook on f7. Bishop e1, bishop takes f7, king h8, and now bishop b2, and black will lose one of pieces and eventually he will lose again. After b4, f5 is not working, so black's best move is to play a6, but then after a4, queen d7, queen b3, I think we have reached also a typical position in Italian. White can play a5 or he can even wait to develop later his bishop to a3 or d2 and play rook d1. After rook e1, black can defend this pawn on e8, but I think this move is worse than the previous one, and that was bishop e6. Here actually White has the two good options. One of them is strategic and one of them is very direct. The strategic one is knight g5. Now, since the rook has moved from square f8, the pawn on f7 is weak, as well as the pawn on h7, and White has yet to play queen h5. If black plays h6, now White has a very good intermediate move, and knight c3. he attacks knight on d5 and invites black to take on c3. And in case black takes on c3, again white has a very strong intermediate move, and this is queen h5. Now the pawn on f7 is hanging again, and white wants to take this pawn with queen, and this knight on c3 is not important because black has big problems around his king. He cannot take on g5 because he just got mated in 2. And the best move is bishop e6, but this is a very ugly pawn structure, and white here is much better. After knight c3, the best move for black is to take on g5. White takes bishop d5, bishop a6, and here white can choose between 2 moves. He can take on c6 or take on a6. If he takes on c6, after bishop takes c6, pawn takes b6, c6, knight e4, bishop e7, b3 for example, f6 defending pawn, a4, a5, bishop a3. White still has a small advantage because of the better pawn structure. Instead of bishop takes c6, he can take on e6, and after rook e6, queen g4. The pawn on g5 is hanging, and later he will play bishop d2 and connect his rooks. Next move is knight e4 and possibly then bishop c3. White here also maintains some pressure. Instead, after move after d5, it takes d5, knight takes d5, rook e1, black can play rook e8, and now d4. This is a very strong move. Black cannot take with pawn on d4 because white will take rook on e8 and then knight on d5. If black goes back with bishop, then he's just losing a pawn on e5, so the only move is knight takes d4. Knight takes d4, and here again black cannot take with pawn because he is losing a piece, so he must take with bishop. And now we can see that the knight on d5 and bishop on d4 are on the same file, and black can lose one of these pieces. But if white plays first c3, which is actually a big mistake, he won't win any material. After bishop f2, king f2, queen h4, and the bishop on c4 is hanging. Instead, white should play bishop takes d5, queen takes d5, and now c3. And it looks like white is winning a piece, and he is completely winning, but in fact that's actually not true, because black will have 2 pawns, and his pieces are very well placed, and the rook here and knight on b1, bishop c1, white will have problems developing those pieces, but still he can hope for advantage. Bishop d7, c takes d4, e takes d4, bishop f4, c5, knight d2, rook takes e1, queen takes e1, rook e8, queen d1. And now in case of bishop c6, white plays queen f3, defending mate treat, and he wants to exchange queens. And he has a piece for 2 pawns, and his advantage is obvious. So we can see that after h3, d5 is not a strong move, and the best move for black is to play d6. If he plays a6, this doesn't change anything. White can play c3, he can even play rook e1 if he is afraid of d5, and we can just transpose to the main line. After d6, c3, a6, bishop b3. White should not be afraid of knight a5 here until black plays bishop a7. So white can start with rook e1, because now knight a5 is not a really serious threat, because b4, knight takes c4, b takes c5, knight a5, and here white can choose to put bishop on a3 or e3. It may seem logical that bishop on a3 is attacking on d6 pawn, but later one of the black ideas to play b6 or b5, and after this white wants to have option of a4. That is why bishop on a3 can be more useful than on a3. After rook e1, black here can play h6, and now probably the best move for white is bishop b3. It is also possible to play knight d2, but now black has the option of knight a5, and after b4, knight takes c4, b takes c5, knight d2, queen d2, black is very close to equalizing the game. So instead bishop b3, and here black can go bishop a7, which is the main line, or rook e8 and bishop e6, which is also a very interesting line. I want to go back to beginning to just show you why we play castling and not move c3, which is usually the most played move in this position. After c3, knight f6, d3, d5, e takes d5, knight takes d5, castle. I think black here has a very good chances. It's important for him after b4 not to play bishop b6, which is losing a piece. But after bishop e7, b5, knight if a5, if white takes on e5, black will have very good compensation for this pawn. And in general, in this position, I think black chances are not worse. That is why we play castle. And after castling knight f6, there is also one additional possibility for white, which is d4, but this leads to very complicated positions, and white is sacrificing a pawn, and black here can obtain very good chances. After castling, knight f6, d3, d6, c3, a6, rook e1, bishop a7, bishop b3, h6. Black delays castling, and he has one very dangerous idea, and he waits white to play move h3. Now after h3, black plays g5. He wants to play g4 and later take with bishop on g4, queen e7, and castle alongside, and put one of his rooks on g8, and the white king will be in serious danger. So h3 is already an imprecise move, and the best move for white is knight d2. He needs to leave his pawns on the second rank. And now in case of g5, white can play knight f1 or knight c4. Actually, it makes little difference, because after g4, knight d2, h5, knight c4. His next moves are bishop e3 to change bishop, and then knight e3 and d4. And black will have to castle alongside, but white will have better control of the center, and this attack is much less dangerous when the white pawns are on their initial squares. After knight bd2, there is also one important trick that you should not forget in this position, in case black plays bishop e6. And now white should play h3 or knight f1, but sometimes white players don't want to exchange these bishops, so they put bishop on c2. But here this leads white to big problems. After knight g4, the pawn on f2 is hanging, and white can defend it from f1 or e2, but it's not making any difference, because after rook e2 or rook f1, bishop takes f2, rook takes f2, knight e3, the queen and bishop on c2 are hanging. Now white plays queen e2, knight c2, rook b1, bishop a2, and it looks like he's losing material, but in fact white still isn't lost. He can play b4, and after bishop takes b1, knight b1, this knight will fall, but black will have 2 or 3 pawns even for 2 pieces, and this is really too much, and he has a good chances to win this game. Instead, after bishop e6, h3 is possible, as well as knight f1. Now g5 is not so strong because this bishop is already on e6, and white here has many moves. He can take on e6, he can also play knight f1 immediately. If you really don't like to play this position after g5, I think it's best to start with move knight f1. This was the move order when black is delaying castling. The reason, there is also one more important move order, and this is one when black delays playing h6. In this position, for example, black plays bishop a7, bishop b3, castling. And now white can play h3, which we play, and he can play knight bd2. But in case he plays knight bd2, black goes knight g4, attacking the f2 pawn, so the best move is rook e2, and now king h8. Black wants to play f5, and after h3, knight h6, knight f1, f5, he is not really afraid of bishop h6, because after g takes h6, this g file will be opened for his rook, which he cannot put right at the moment now because of the bishop on b3, but later he wants to play queen e7, bishop e6, put one rook on g8, another one on f8, and it's not very clear what will white do in this position. And I really don't like this position with white pieces. This is why I think h3 is the most precise move order in this position. But for example, in this position, if black castles, after bishop b3, h6, now white can play knight bd2, because knight g4 is no longer a threat. Knight g4, just rook e2, and this knight will have to go back on f6, and black has lost some time. So this was basically all that you need to know about transpositions and move orders. This was our last video. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.